Good afternoon and welcome to today's Industry Week webcast, Mobile Transformation Post-COVID, 5 Technologies to Empower Your Frontline Workforce, sponsored by Samsung. My name is Peter Freddy, Technology Editor with Industry Week. Before we begin, let me explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you're having audio difficulties or slides are not advancing, simply press your F5 key to refresh the webcast console. If you are running pop-up blocking software, you will need to disable it to view the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the question mark help button in the upper right corner to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the maximize icon in the upper right corner to enlarge the window. We welcome your questions during today's event. Please use the Ask a Question window on the left side of your screen to submit questions. We'll answer as many questions as possible following the main presentation, but please feel free to send in your questions at any time and we'll add them to the queue. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and will be available on the Industry Week website within the next day for your review. You'll be notified by email when the archive is available. When the webinar ends, please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Samsung for sponsoring today's webinar and introduce Kevin Eaton. He's the Head of Manufacturing Solutions and Business Development at Samsung America. Kevin, tell us about some of the challenges and opportunities you're seeing in the manufacturing industry today.
Thank you so much, Peter, for hosting us today, and thank you all for attending. Everyone thinks about Samsung as a device seller. Well, we have one of the largest manufacturing companies in the world. We have 116,000 workers pumping out 450 million devices a year. So we understand firsthand the challenges that manufacturers face. We don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. We also spend a lot of time talking to our manufacturing clients about their use cases and challenges. We have dedicated B2B manufacturing teams that focus exclusively on helping businesses find the right solutions to streamline their workflows, digitally enable their workforces, and prepare their frontline for Industry 4.0. Throughout modern history, manufacturing has experienced several major shifts, and we're in the middle of one right now. Initially, Industry 1.0 came with the invention of the steam engine. A century later, assembly lines changed everything once again, ushering in Industry 2.0. Then about 50 years ago, computers and warehouse automation shifted us into Industry 3.0, moving from manual processes to more automated processes. Now, Industry 4.0 is an extension of that, where we start to integrate IT on the manufacturing floor, or as we like to say, integrate the carpeted areas with the concrete areas. Industry 4.0 requires manufacturers to fundamentally rethink how they operate. But according to a study by Plex, as of 2020, only 24% of manufacturers had implemented digital transformation programs beyond pilot stages. This innovative 24% are leveraging a wide range of emerging technologies, from IoT-enabled machines to artificial intelligence and machine learning to augmented reality. They are embracing the smart factory. These technologies can boost productivity and the bottom line. But to really harness the power of Industry 4.0 and to get the most out of IT investment, frontline workers need access to. And all of that starts with mobility, getting devices into the hands of every frontline worker. 91% of business leaders say digitally enabled frontline workers are more productive and perform at a higher level. And 78% say that empowering frontline workers is critical to their long-term strategy. Samsung could not agree more. Digitally enabled front lines have real-time access to data and to each other. Their workflows are paperless, their communication is seamless, and they have all the tools and information they need to do their jobs well and to do them safely. That's why Samsung has built a great partner ecosystem with hardware and software solutions, We've partnered with leading software as a service vendors, accessory designers, and internet service providers to offer targeted, robust solutions for manufacturers. Two of these companies, Beekeeper and LibreStream, are here with us today, Marika and John. Tell us about the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing today with the manufacturing customers.
Thanks, Kevin. What we're seeing is that the vast majority of frontline workers are disconnected and disengaged right now. For those of us that sit in front of the desk, we have access to lots of communication applications, email, chat, intranets, wikis, ticketing systems, analytics. It goes on and on. But most of that information is not available to the front line, and that leads to tremendous inefficiencies. According to a study by McKinsey, up to 3 hours per worker is wasted each week just because of misalignment and misinformation. What am I supposed to be working on? Where do I find information to perform that work? And who can I ask if I have a question? That's an astounding amount of time that's just wasted. And the managers are not immune either. Up to 50% of their time is just acting as a go-between from corporate down to the front line. They hold stand-ups, they pass out policies, they introduce new initiatives, they update the workers on metrics, but they're doing all of that rather than coaching, mentoring, and making critical decisions. They spend far too much time just relaying information. And all these disengaged and disconnected workers are very costly. Just a 1,000-person manufacturing plant can lose over $1 million a year just to lost productivity, safety incidents, and turnover. And today, especially speaking of turnover, today the manufacturing industry is posting over 400,000 job openings monthly. Any turnover is quite costly considering the time to hire and train employees. So now, more so than ever, there's a significant opportunity to address the disconnected and disengaged worker with mobile technologies. Right, Marika?
Absolutely, John. Kevin, John, thank you for sharing those really important trends on Industry 4.0 and how we're already starting to experience the value. As you both said, there's so much more value to come, and especially for that 80% of the workforce, those people who just don't sit behind a desk. At LibreStream, our mission is to give this deskless or that frontline workforce, as you both described, that ability to capture, that ability to access and deliver knowledge across their organizations. Because what that group needs is so very different than the office workers, those people who are in the carpeted spaces, who have access to consistent networks, computer-based tools. These people do their work in very tough environments. They could be inspecting an aircraft in a hangar, performing a factory acceptance test at a facility, or maybe doing a safety review at an oil rig. And that class of worker really needs a hardened solution to be able to perform outside of the office. And one common problem we hear consistently from this group of workers in these organizations is all around workforce shortage. By 2030, this workforce shortage is expected to reach 85 million people globally. But it isn't going to become a problem only in 2030. It's a problem that our customers are experiencing and feeling today. And it's compounded by this more transient nature of our emerging workforce leaders. So think of those people who are, aged 25 to 34. They're averaging just 2.8 years on the job, so less than 3 years on the job, whereas these more experienced individuals who are in that 55 to 64 age range are 3 times higher. They're close to 10 years on the job. So digital tools, whether it's being able to access remote experts via video or on-the-job training with digital work instructions, these kinds of capabilities are absolutely essential to expedite onboarding and really scale this shrinking pool of experts that we're all seeing. And that shrinking pool and this transient workforce is creating that critical condition that we're all talking about now, which is knowledge loss. A recent study by the Service Council found that 70% of organizations identify knowledge loss as their critical issue. And it speaks to why we're seeing such high demand, and you spoke about this earlier, Kevin, for tools, digital tools like the ones we're talking about here. COVID was a catalyst. we're seeing that 82% of companies are already planning to increase investments in tools like AR by over 20%. So that's a pretty incredible change that we're seeing in the industry. And this condition creates pain across many different factors, moving over from the resilience of this workforce to more efficiency and safety-based metrics. In the U.S. manufacturing sector alone, skills shortage is expected to cause $2.5 trillion in at-risk GDP by 2028. But more personally, this leads to a knowledge gap. This knowledge gap is leading to 240 hours of lost productivity per worker every year. It's 240 hours per worker per year. And that's just because people are waiting and trying to find information. The other driver that we're finding is really impacting this drive to digitization is around safety. So every year there are over 340 million workforce-related accidents occurring globally. Ensuring that the workforce has access to the knowledge they need to get that more resilient, efficient, and safe workforce is really critically important. So that's some of what LibreStream is seeing in the industry.
Well, thank you all for the excellent overview. Now we're going to dive a little deeper and discuss how mobile technology gives manufacturers a leg up in Industry 4.0. John Keating, Head of Partners and Strategic Alliances at Beekeeper, will start us off by talking about how mobility improves employee engagement.
Thank you. So employee engagement, it's something you definitely want, but the question is, what is it? And the best way to discuss it is to go through a couple of examples. So let's take a look at one of the first ones here, which is Cargill. We worked with Cargill to identify how they would engage their workforce. You know them as one of the world's largest food manufacturers, and they have very clear use cases about how they want to engage. Last year and continuing until now, they've had to invest frequently in updates on COVID-related matters around company policies surrounding the pandemic. They also wanted to ensure that every employee had easy access to shift schedules to help curb absenteeism and access to reports showing plant metrics and KPIs, hopefully leading to different ideas for improvement. And like any place of business, Cargill plants are subject to environmental factors, such as weather. They want better ways to prepare, inform, and recover from weather events. And Cargill has a robust employee recognition program, but the program wasn't widely disseminating all the recognitions to allow those announcements to act as a model for others. So Cargill had a very good handle on the use cases, but first, to accomplish those use cases, they had to overcome some challenges. And first and foremost, Cargill employs a very diverse workforce. Many different languages are spoken in the plants. In fact, in one instance, over 40 languages were spoken at one location. So this takes a very simple communication task, such as, are we wearing a mask today? And it makes communicating that information very difficult. Cargill was also relying on some paper processes. Employee schedules were printed and posted, but when you left the plant, you lost access to your schedule. Plant managers were also playing the go-between, passing information from HQ down to the employees. It's a lot like that game of telephone that we played as children, but that was a cautionary tale. The information morphs as it's transmitted, and that creates inconsistency, and Cargill wanted to solve that. Finally, Cargill plants were acting as silos of information. There were great ideas, employee accomplishments, and improved processes, but sometimes they would stay in one location rather than being spread out across the company. So how did we help Cargill? Well, Cargill used Beekeeper as the point of contact for their people, processes, and systems. They implemented multiple streams of communication, both top-down and bottom-up, allowing information to flow freely in a mobile technology. It integrated seamlessly with existing systems. So it integrated with an HCM or headcount management solution in order to be able to get profile information so that the right communications would go to the right individuals. It also integrated with a WFM, a workforce management system, to be able to pull in that schedule information and put the schedule in everyone's pockets, no matter where they were. It was fast and easy to set up for new employees, and it drove high adoption rates. And most importantly, it was scalable and secure enough for Cargill to be able to use it. Let's take a look at an example. We also work with Kistler. So Kistler is a global manufacturer of sensors and measurement equipment. They have 60 locations in 30 countries. And some of those sensors were even used on the Apollo missions that went to the moon. Now, different from Cargill, they had very different topics that they needed to communicate to their employees. And we see this a lot in high-tech manufacturing, shift handover. When you're running a high-tech complex process, you need to make sure that the incoming shift is fully briefed on the current status of the manufacturing process. And Kistler focused on taking some of the offline methods they were using and moving those to mobile technology so that they could be better documented and tracked. By the same token, clean room procedures. Kistler needed to ensure that the employees were following these procedures. So one, they wanted to make sure that when the information was sent out, that it was received. And second, they wanted to receive an acknowledgement back from the employees that they were going to adhere to these procedures. And they could only do that by switching to mobile technology. Cross-departmental communication, again, we see this a lot in high-tech manufacturing. You're pulling in a lot of experts from a lot of different departments on a project, and being able to dynamically create streams of communications and groups of communication for those teams that are working on a project was extremely important. And finally, consistency. There's always a chance that someone's going to miss a newsletter or fail to attend that stand-up. They don't see their manager that day, but you still need to get important information to them. So by creating the consistency and supplementing the other forms of communication with communication on the mobile technology, you make sure that you canvas the entire workforce. So every organization has slightly different needs and a slightly different definition for what employee engagement is, but again and again, we see the benefit of the manufacturing frontline being enabled through mobile technology.
Thanks, John. Now we'll hear from Marika Weikamp, Senior Vice President of Product at LibreStream, about mobile solutions that improve knowledge retention in manufacturing.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, John. Great examples of how beekeepers scaling knowledge and getting consistency to deliver value. I'm going to continue on that theme, and as you just described, Peter, around some of the focus at LibreStream on knowledge networks, and this is all in focusing on combating this problem of knowledge loss. So I'll just take you through a few examples after I share what we mean by knowledge networks at LibreStream. So knowledge networks really begin by digitizing that frontline workforce, those people who are in those difficult areas that need to have access to these mobile tools we've been talking about. And our intention is working with our customers, capturing all the information that's just shared naturally through remote expert collaboration calls. Maybe it's digitized step-by-step work instructions, could be integration with IoT sensors to see the data that can really help take the knowledge out of the heads of your experts, out of your paper manuals, maybe the Post-it notes that are in the back of your desks, and centralize all of that. By contextualizing this information that we're capturing with tags, we can apply artificial intelligence to analyze and present the critical knowledge back, where and when this frontline workforce needs it, any environment, any device. So it's really critical to get started on this journey of digitization and this journey of capturing the information that is, again, in the heads of your teammates or perhaps in your desks, so that we can preserve and really combat the knowledge loss we're facing. And I'll share with you a couple of examples of why this really matters in just a moment. There's a lot of different value outcomes to this approach. So one of the customers I've worked with identified that expediting time to competency for their new staff was one of their top priorities. And this organization experiences high turnover. It's upwards of 25% annually. That's just due to the nature of the work at this organization. So they really needed solutions to combat that problem. So what they worked on with LibreStream was a solution that allowed them to cut the time they required for onboarding by over a third, so about 33% faster time to competency. And the dollars that we see spent globally on employee training is $26 billion. So you can imagine this ability to shrink the onboarding time by using digital tools like Remote Expert and digital work instructions can really make a major impact, especially with this knowledge loss we're all facing. So these cost savings can come in areas like the onboarding, but also from a lot of different sources. I'd say a decade ago when we started working with customers, travel savings were commonly tracked. You know, how much can I save by not having to send an expert to the scene of the problem and instead do it virtually? But now our market has matured, and COVID-19 has definitely been a catalyst for it. We're seeing clear cost savings associated with many different areas. It could be equipment uptime that I'll share an example in just a moment, first-time fix rates, and lots of other different metrics that are important to these different businesses. Safety is also an area that really cannot be overlooked, and I know we're going to talk about that in a moment, but it's often measured by areas like fewer miles traveled, fewer hazardous hours having to be spent, and this often expands to include environmental outcomes as organizations are really looking to reduce their carbon footprint. So I'll touch on two specific case studies in our manufacturing customer base. The first is Renault Trucks, who you probably know is a part of Volvo Group. They're an OEM of trucks and commercial vehicles. They started using our solution to provide direct support and training to their dealerships. And these dealers are all over the world. Their training in the use of our solution takes the form of real-time, on-the-job training using AR-based Remote Expert software. They're really looking at areas like warranty oversight and inspections, but one of their main goals was to reduce downtime. In this industry, it's called standing costs. And they needed to do that both for their dealerships and, of course, for the owners of these assets. So they've seen a significant improvement in their standing costs. They're also tracking carbon footprint by measuring the miles not driven, the flights not taken, by being able to provide this remote support through our on-site solution. Another case study is one of the largest robotic suppliers in the world. You would recognize their name. And they are utilizing our digital solution primarily for asset maintenance and service at their customer locations all over the world. And for them, a critical need was to have access to live translation services during Remote Expert calls. So you can imagine that their supply chain, their experts, and their customers are all over the place, meaning that they speak different languages. They have cultural challenges to overcome with Remote Expert collaboration. So they needed a solution that would enable them to have live translations as part of it. And we do that through AI tools like natural language processing to provide that much more global experience. So this customer is tracking many different specific results from the solution. They are also looking at higher equipment uptime, and much of that comes from time savings. So taking resolution time down for them from 24 hours to 20 minutes by eliminating travel, eliminating second visit requirements, it can lead to savings in the tens of thousands per hour, depending on the equipment that's at the site. So just to give you a few other examples here across the industrial sector, we see a wide variety of outcomes. They are different, they're specific to the industry, they're specific to the use case, and it can range from National Oil Well Varco, which you may be familiar with. They're an organization that serves the oil and gas sector, and included our platform in their Tracker Vision solution. And this is a solution that they present to customers and really enables their field technicians to get access to this remote knowledge that they need. So they needed to scale their expertise. They were feeling that same knowledge loss challenge that we've talked about already, and they've tracked a 70% gain in productivity. SGS, which you may know is one of the largest test, inspection, and service companies in the world, they're performing remote inspections now in using our on-site platform. So instead of driving to the site of the inspection, and that could be to look at goods that are coming over a border or to inspect a facility, they are now able to do that all virtually. So they're taking what used to be 1 to 2 inspections per day per inspector 3 times. and you can imagine what kind of impact that has on their organization. I'll fast forward over to Rolls-Royce. And for the aerospace industry, if you're familiar with it, aircraft on ground is a core metric. So when an aircraft is grounded due to an incident, could be something like a bird strike, a range of expertise and visual inputs are needed. Rolls-Royce looked to a digital solution to be able to bring these people together with all these different skill sets to virtually be able to inspect aircraft and be able to do that using instruments like borescopes, video scopes, so essentially a camera on a stick to get inside the wing. That removes the need to remove the wing from the aircraft, which costs an incredible amount of time and money. So in their case, they've reported really strong results, upwards of $800,000 when a large body jet is grounded. So while the form of business value differs from customer to customer and across industries, the results that are tracked are incredibly important to each organization. And again, it starts with that digitization of this remote workforce. Back over to you, Peter.
Thank you. Now we'll pass things off to Lloyd Johnson, Head of Manufacturing Vertical Markets at Samsung. He's going to walk us through the next two benefits of mobile manufacturing solutions, including enhanced communication and integrated scanning.
Thanks, John. We've talked a lot today about the importance of getting information from the carpeted areas to the concrete areas, but important communication also happens on the warehouse floor, among team members and their managers, and across different teams and departments. And today, we're really seeing a need for this communication to happen instantaneously. Frontline workers need the ability to collaborate in real time, one-on-one and in groups. And they need the ability to respond and take action immediately. You know, time is money. And every minute that workers waste tracking someone down or waiting for an assignment or trying to inform everyone about a maintenance issue on a machine, that productivity is lost forever. Of course, many manufacturers have already traditionally used two-way radios for real-time communication, but not everyone gets a walkie-talkie, and those devices are bulky and expensive. They're built for a single purpose, and they only give you one communication channel. Smartphones are multi-purpose devices that enable multi-channel communications. Your team can talk or text, or they can message each other via third-party collaboration apps like Microsoft Teams or Zello. This flexibility is important in modern warehouses because different users have their own preferences, and different environments might require different types of communication. For instance, many younger workers notoriously ignore phone calls, preferring to text. And on loud factory floors, voice communication might not be nearly impossible. When frontline workers are equipped with smartphones, they can communicate using whatever channel makes the most sense in a given situation. And they're not just communicating with a handful of people who have walkie-talkies, they can connect with everyone on their team or on the floor or in the field. Of course, there's a lot to be said for push-button communications like you get with traditional walkie-talkies. It's convenient and instantaneous, but you can get that same experience on smartphones with push-to-talk. All of the Samsung rugged devices feature at least one programmable button, and the Xcover Pro smartphone has two. So you can use one button for push-to-talk and give your team that walkie-talkie experience, then can program the other button for voice-enabled SMS or a third-party app like Beekeeper or LibreStream. This way, teams can connect with the push-to-talk of a button or however they want to communicate. It's seamless, it's scalable, and it's all possible with a single device. Now we're going to talk about integrated scanning. Walkie-talkies are the only legacy technology that warehouse workers carry around. They're also carrying bulky, expensive scanners, but when you have a multi-purpose smartphone in every hand, you also have a barcode scanner in every hand. Barcode scanning from smartphones isn't new, but until recently, it wasn't a great option for frontline workers who scan things all day. It wasn't ergonomic, the scanning range was really low, and built-in scanning apps only worked with certain types of codes. And smartphones just weren't rugged enough to be practical on warehouse floors. That's all still true for many smartphones, but Samsung solved these problems by equipping our rugged devices with Knox Capture. Knox Capture, which we built in partnership with ScanDit, triggers special camera adjustments, features designed especially for frontline use. So you get truly enterprise-grade scanning from the mobile device. Knox Capture can be integrated with your inventory management system and customized for your unique barcodes and use cases. Some of your workers might still need or want the traditional scanning gun experience, and with the right mobile scanning accessories, they can still have it. Our accessory partners have designed a variety of holsters, mounts, and clips for Samsung rugged devices, so you can really customize the solution based on what your frontline workers need. Best of all, if someone has a smartphone, then everyone has a scanner. No more sharing, no more time wasted looking for a scanner, and no more carrying multiple devices on the floor.
Thanks, Lloyd. That's great information. The last mobility benefit we'll discuss today is employee safety. Kevin, take it away.
Thanks, Peter. Over the past year, we spent a lot of time talking to manufacturers about employee safety and wellness. We've seen warehouses and plants using wearables like the Samsung Galaxy Active Watch to help with social distancing. A great example was featured on 60 Minutes last year, with Samsung and Radiant Technologies helping Ford Motor Company with keeping employees safe and socially distanced. But now as we begin to move past COVID-19, wearables can still play a big role in employee safety, whether that's alerting businesses when there's a man down in the field or monitoring employee vital signs to ensure their safety in the field or on the floor. Beyond wearables, we're also working to make our products even safer on the warehouse floor. Forklifts are a great example. As manufacturers are moving away from VMUs and instead mounting tablets onto forklifts, we wanted to ensure that tablets weren't a distraction for drivers. So we partnered with a Samsung sister company, SDS America, to produce an app called Inertia, which blanks out the screen while the forklift is in motion. This way, drivers' eyes stay focused on what's ahead of them instead of on the tablet. Then, of course, we partnered with Beekeeper and LibreStream that provide access to things like safety documents, safety inspection, checklists, vehicle accident reports, QA checklists, crisis management checklists, SOPs, PTT, to notify workers about incidents or threats in the workplace. The list really goes on. And having these resources in a digital format ensures employees have easy access to information that keeps them safe. John, what are you seeing at Beekeeper?
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing that the safety has always been critically important in manufacturing. And now with mobile technology, we see a number of things that are improving. One of them is standards, and that you can immediately disseminate all the standards to everyone at once. And if you have to change a standard, it can be changed broadly across locations, across people, across languages. Auditing is much better. Now we see an image of, taking photo capture of safety hazards or accidents and incidents. Being able to document that in real time is incredibly important. And in order to be able to go back and understand, what occurred and how can we improve upon it. We also see that auditing allows for better reporting. You can now, see if you have, something that was a one-off or is it a trend that's taking place. We see a safety culture improving. Instead of safety being really a gotcha moment where we're trying to call somebody out for creating an issue. Instead, what we're doing is creating that communication from the safety team that we're all in this together. We want to make sure everybody's going home just as healthy as when they arrived. And finally, process management. Making sure that things are dealt with much more quickly than they have in the past. Instead of documents having to be passed or moved between departments, signed off and reviewed, all of that can be done digitally, and that speeds up the process and helps create the most important safety improvements quickly. So that's very, very important.
Excellent. Well, thank you, John. Those are all really great points. Being able to communicate with the entire team about safety protocols and incidents, it's incredibly important. At LibreStream, we're also seeing that manufacturers are using mobile solutions to better manage those protocols and avoid those incidents. So, for example, individual work instructions can help step people through the protocols at the beginning of each shift. With checklists, it could ask things like, are you wearing your hard hat and goggles? Or even better, show how they're supposed to be worn properly. Or did you read the latest forklift safety guidelines? And again, even better, providing links to those digital manuals so that people can see those in situ. So digital work instructions can make a big impact on employee safety. Having that digitized process that can be tracked and reviewed before projects get started, and being able to do things like use artificial intelligence tools like computer vision to recognize and automate safety alerts, being able to tell if there's a potential danger spot, or integrating with sensor data so that you can see if there's a challenge with that piece of machinery before you start work on it. So those are some of the areas and ways that we can be using digital transformative tools like we're talking about here to really drive safety. It comes down to getting the right information in the right hands at the right time so people can do their jobs well and also do their jobs safely. So back over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Marika. That completes our discussion of the 5 benefits that you can derive from mobile technology.
Thanks, Peter. At Samsung, when we think about improving manufacturing operations, we're looking at it from 2 different angles. Within the 4 walls, meaning plant floor operations or the concrete areas, and outside of the 4 walls for the field technicians. Wherever frontline workers are actually working, they need instant access to data and communication channels, and they need to be able to rely on those devices to work even in the harshest environments. In the past, when we talked to manufacturers about mobility, we kept hearing them that they wanted to digitally enable their front lines, but consumer-grade mobile devices just weren't durable enough to be on the factory floor or out in the field. And industry-grade devices were too expensive to buy for the entire front line. Based on the feedback, Samsung began building ruggedized devices about 5 years ago. Today, we have a rugged portfolio, including a smartphone and 2 tablets that are built to military standards, but made for commercial enterprises, including the Galaxy Tab Active 3, the Tab Active Pro, and the Xcover Pro smartphone. All of these devices meet MIL Standard 810 standards, meaning that they can withstand repeated drops from 1.5 meters and withstand with vibrations and extreme high or low temperatures. They can also be stored at high altitudes or low altitudes and withstand solar radiation, blowing rain, blowing dust, humidity, and even immersion in water. We've added several special features for work, including the glove mode and wet hand mode, the S Pen, allowing you to write directly on the tablet, replaceable batteries, programmable buttons, as we've talked about before, pogo pins for rack storage and charging for shared devices. In addition to our rugged hardware, we've partnered with some of the most innovative manufacturing solution providers to create mobile solutions for a variety of use cases, some of which you've met during the webinar today. Together, we're committed to helping manufacturers thrive in Industry 4.0 by empowering every frontline worker with the data and tools they need in the palm of their hands. Thank you for listening today, and thank you to my partners, Lloyd, John, and Marika, for joining. Peter, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Thank you all for sharing your expertise with us here today. Now I'd like to open it to the floor for some questions. First question we have here is for John. How do you overcome employee reluctance to engage with their employer?
Thanks for that question. We hear that a lot. Employers especially are concerned that their employees may not be receptive or engaging with what's trying to be communicated. And what that typically means is that the employer actually needs to take a step back and think about what's going to be an engaging piece of content or an engagement that you want to begin with your employee. And so a great example that we often see is if you do have an incentive program, maybe a bonus that's tied to a KPI, such as on-time attendance or productivity goals, that can be very compelling content. And so sharing more information about how those bonuses are calculated, showing examples of people that have achieved those bonuses, and doing things that, maybe even providing direct communications about how close someone is to achieving that bonus, all of those things create that engagement. Suddenly the employee is getting information that they desire. Now, once that engagement is created, then the employee may be more receptive to other communications that might not be as engaging if they were standalone.
All right, great. Next question here is for Kevin. How does Samsung secure its devices for the enterprise?
Thanks, Peter. That's a great question. Samsung has a technology called Knox. You've probably heard of Fort Knox being the most secure place in the world. Samsung Knox is built into every Samsung device from the hardware layer up through the software layers. Numerous certifications, including FIPS, SOC, and DISA, to name a few. Our devices are used at the highest level of government agencies. On top of that, Samsung also offers a suite of Knox software solutions. Knox Suite is a suite of products to secure, deploy, and manage your fleet in your enterprise environment. One of the great solutions, a part of Knox Suite, is eFODA, or Enterprise Firmware over the Air. This gives control to the IT staff on when firmware or OS updates are pushed and implemented on the devices. Your employees can't keep delaying the software update, creating security concerns, or an employee updating too fast before IT has certified the update, which could cause bigger issues with custom software not necessarily being able to work before it's been tested.
All right. This next question is a great one for Marika. I believe that AR and AI can help improve business outcomes for my team. However, I'm a little concerned that I won't be able to get my executives and senior leadership on board. How do I begin the process of gaining their support?
That's a great question, Peter. Thanks for sending it over to me. It's interesting because really I work for a technology company at LibreStream, but technology doesn't matter. You can throw out all the acronyms you want, but it really isn't the technology. It's bringing it down to the business results. The business results that those digital tools can deliver, whether it's AR and AI or something else. And, it's interesting because it really starts with sharing the successes, whether you're sharing those with users, you're sharing those with peers, you're also sharing those upwards. We need to make sure we're doing that. And I mentioned a study earlier that revealed that 82% of organizations are planning to increase investments in tools like AR by over 20% in 2021. And that matters too, because it shows how this is driving results for organizations. They are planning to invest more, and that's an important message here as well as you're taking these solutions forward within your organizations.
All right, great. We have another question here. This one's for Kevin. Do you offer intrinsically safe devices that can be used in hazardous environments?
Hey, John, I'll take that one. This is Lloyd. I'll take that one if that's okay.
Right. Yep.
We actually do. We offer intrinsically safe devices through one of our partners. And so we have a use case and a real focus on those segments within the vertical that have environments that are potentially hazardous. And so we have large deployments today in the intrinsically safe environments, and we'll be happy to have more conversation if the need arises for the audience.
All right, great. This next question is another one for John. In our facility, we do not allow devices on the factory floor. When can employees use these engagement tools?
That's something we hear quite a bit. I mentioned food manufacturing earlier, and especially in food manufacturing, we hear that a lot, that individuals are expected to place their personal devices in their lockers and not bring them onto the floor. So as we've discussed earlier in this presentation, ruggedized devices are a great solution, being able to provide this mobile technology on the factory floor so that they can access it. But in lieu of that, if you don't have it, or it's still something that an employer may not consider, setting up time before they go on the factory floor and after they depart the factory floor, that's still part of the shift, but is used specifically to document shift notes, to access communications, to complete inbound and outbound activities that happen during your shift. As long as that time is baked into the schedule, then it still allows the benefits of the mobile technology to be leveraged.
All right, great. This next question is for Marika. Introducing new tools can be challenging, especially if there's a lot of learning to do. How can I get my workforce on board?
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. Change, as we all know, and I'm sure we all see in our organizations, can be difficult. And it is incredibly important to communicate the benefits expected from a new tool, like what we've been talking about, not just to the company, not just the company benefits that we've been spending quite a bit of time on here, but to the people. What is the benefit to that worker, to that user from using the tool? Is it going to make their job easier? Are they going to have better work-life balance, less travel that they'll need to do? And the answer is, with solutions like we've been talking about, that is absolutely possible. The bigger challenge, I think, for organizations isn't in how to use the tools, because these are pretty simple solutions in terms of how to get started as a user. It's describing why you would use it in terms of the benefit and when. When do you start incorporating this digitization into your daily work? And you obviously need really great training and customer success teams to support you through that process so that you can deploy at scale across your entire user base. And then, of course, from that experience of communicating benefits, then sharing those successes that we talked about earlier, also incredibly important.
All right, great. I have another question here for Lloyd. How long does it take to deploy solutions like these, and what advice do you have for scaling mobility in the warehouse?
Yeah, that's a question that comes up quite frequently, and I have to tell you, it's unique to each customer, and it's very personal. I would just start by saying it really depends on a few things. Number one, what resources and priorities do you put on deployment? Meaning, do you have the manpower, the partnerships in place that can assist with those deployments? Samsung specifically and their partners, we have a unique platform that Kevin mentioned earlier called Knox. And Knox has several tools that are available for customers to deploy rapidly and accelerate the deployment process. One specifically is mobile enrollment. So mobile enrollment allows the devices to be deployed into the MDM, and further tools within the Knox platform can also allow for the devices to manage those applications effectively based on the customer's requirements. In terms on advice of scaling the product, I think you really got to take a step back as an organization and ask yourself, what is it you want to accomplish? What problem are you trying to solve? And then from there, work very closely with your OEMs, with Samsung, with your partners, and to ensure that you have a plan to address those issues, and then also to mitigate risks. I think it's also important to just call out that you have to create a framework and a blueprint so that the partner, the OEM, the solution provider all know exactly what it is you want to accomplish, and from there the plan can be executed on, and that scaling process will go a lot smoother. And so that would be my advice to the folks on this call in terms of scaling and time of which it takes to deploy the product or solution.
All right, great. Looks like we have time for one last question. This one's for Marika. How should I choose an AI and AR-powered remote collaboration platform?
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I really liked that last answer because part of it is all around doing the research and really understanding what problem you're trying to solve as you go into this research exercise of finding the platform that really fits the problem that you're solving and your organization as well. One report that I thought was quite thorough and thoughtful was by Verdantix. And I don't know if you know that analyst, but it's an industrial analyst that did a study into 27 different augmented reality remote assistance providers. It's entitled Smart Innovators AR Solutions for Remote Assistance. So it might be one you want to take a look at. What I liked about it is they looked at 4 high-level criteria in terms of what might matter to you. So for example, they looked at the vendor's ability to scale the solution, moving from pilots that sometimes people get stuck in to really multiple sites and enterprise-wide deployments. They looked at evaluating vendor capabilities based on industry use case, because what your use case is may lead you to a different need out in the industry. And then they wanted to also explore the vendor innovation strategy and product roadmap. Is this vendor going to be there for you in the future as you build towards your future of work? And then the last part was really looking at integration and how this vendor is looking at the partner ecosystem. Are they really bringing in all of the tools that you may need today or may need tomorrow and making that part of the experience? So that might be an area you want to take a look at, is reports like what Verdantix has put out.
All right, excellent. Great presentation, very informative. I would like to thank our speakers, Kevin Eaton, Lloyd Johnson, Marika Vijkamp, and John Keating, as well as our sponsor, Samsung, for making today's event possible. On behalf of Industry Week, have a productive remainder of the day.